Playing Possum Podcast.
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 Playing Possum Podcast. Hi, I am Catherine Edmonds, and this is the Playing Possum Podcast, and it is just me and
Kacey Montgomery. Yes, we are doing a mini-sode today because it has been quite a week or two. And so we just wanted to get together for a little chat about something creative.
yeah, we are just recording an episode. Our third host, Jamie, is not available, so we wanted to just record because both of us have been kind of jazzed about creative stuff recently. I'm just coming off of teaching, assisting a mentor of mine, Yuri Kobayashi, and we were teaching steam bending wood, which is where you get wood wet and then you steam it and then you can like bend it into crazy shapes. So it's just a really fun creative week up there. And so I texted Kacey that I was like pretty jazzed about talking about creativity today.
Yeah, totally. And over the course of the week, I had finished a promo zine for Plain Possum that we have been kind of iterating and working on for a couple months now, actually. I think like it was the first big project that I took on as part of this organization. And it feels really good. And trying to keep that momentum alive, I think, is hard sometimes, especially after I think finishing a project, but also it's weird because I'm like, should I rest or should I keep going?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I know it is. Like I feel like I'm in that moment too where I just got back and I really need to be making stuff for this Southtown art walk that I'm doing in December. And I'm like, do I like rest and recharge or do I just like power through and like ride that energy wave of creativity? So I think I need to do just by sheer amount of time that I have left, I need to ride that wave. But yeah, it was really fun to sort of watch other people be super excited about learning and kind of getting ideas and drawing and trying crazy stuff. So yeah, it made me kind of excited to get back in the studio and work on my own work.
So I know that you've worked with Yuri before in helping her teach her stuff, but I haven't been to one of the sessions. What kind of stuff are you doing? Like, is there a project that everyone's working on together, or is she just showing techniques?
Yeah, this particular one, the idea is like the first section of this was just us doing demonstration of like what the technique is and like what's possible. Because kind of historically, like steam bending has been used for like boat building and chair building, but there like there's people who use steam bending to do more sculptural work, which is what Yuri's work is, much more sculptural and artistic. And so what she was showing is just kind of like how you can do kind of more interesting things than just sort of a typical U-bend for a boat or a chair. So we were kind of doing that. And so the idea is then that those same people will come back to a 5-day workshop in May and sort of have a project in mind and we'll help them with that work. But yeah, it had me thinking a lot about teaching. I teach woodworking kind of as a large part of my job, and like a lot of woodworking is taught is like project based, of like build this thing, or I am known for building this thing and so I'm going to help you build this exact thing, like, you know, insert person's name chair or insert person's name table, right? And the way Yuri teaches is like, here is a technique and then you get to decide what you want to build, what's kind of getting you jazzed and what's exciting for you within your language, right? Your language of creativity. And that's really the kind of teaching I like to do as well, is like, I do it, but it's fun, and I love watching people sort of learn the techniques. But the more exciting way I teach is like, here is how to do woodworking, and then now figure out how you want to use that medium to make whatever you want to make. And that is much more exciting to me, and that type of learning is more exciting to me too. I'm taking this like drawing comics and making comic books and comic strips class. It's like this year-long class, and the way they teach it is really similar, where it's like, here's all the information of how comics work, sort of, but like there's no pressure to draw a certain way or to have a certain subject or anything like that. And it's like, I think the guy is really, who runs the program, is very driven to just help people get their stories out in their own voice and their own style. And I think that's really, we need more of that, right?
Totally. I mean, it's one of the things that I really enjoyed about going to school for graphic design was, especially when it came to making things like posters or illustrations and having those projects where we're learning things intentionally. We're learning about hierarchy. We're learning how to use certain illustration mediums. We're learning about composition and being able to take whatever is like at the top of my brain. You know, I think about the fandoms I have when I'm researching or I'm listening to shows or just consuming, you know, art and media in general, and being able to be like, okay, so I'm going to like, I was totally about to burn out on this show that I've been listening to by working for several weeks intensively on this project to get through it. But, you know, I think it's kind of like it's like an honorable death for consuming media when you get burned out on it, because you've also been able to leverage it into your own learning and your own creation.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think so I watched this movie that I want to recommend to you, but also everyone, last night at the Dark Side, which is like the local theater in Corvallis. It was called Dusty and Stones, and it is about these two country music artists from Eswatini, which is like formerly known as Swaziland. It's like this, South Africa is a country, and then there's like a tiny country that South Africa is all the way around. And they just like got super into country music as kids, and then they started singing country songs as musicians. And the documentary follows them. They get invited to America, like to Texas and Nashville, to sort of perform their songs because people discovered them on YouTube. And there's this scene in there that was so incredibly powerful to me, where there's a recording artist who records their songs in Nashville, and like, you know, they hear it back, and it is like just the most emotional moment for them, but also for the audience. But I think about it as like, in relation, like I sort of think about it in relation, because I don't know music, of like what I do is like, you kind of see this thing in your head that you want to make, and then when it's in its final 3D form, like there is like this satisfaction, and like when it turns out well and it's what you imagined it to be, like there's definitely moments where you're like, that isn't what I thought it was going to look like. But like when you have the skill and the knowledge and the ability and the vision, all of those things like line up, and it's like, oh, this is what was in my head, and then it came through my body and I made it into a 3D object. Like that is like why I do what I do. It's like why I teach, it's why I make, like, and it's like witnessing that, them go through that moment of like they've had this music inside them, you know, since they were kids, and then getting all the way to this moment where they came from their tiny country and the tiny town that they lived in to Nashville to record their songs, and then hear that back was like, just like knowing that journey, and like, I don't know, it was just like I was like bawling. And then I tried to talk to Marcia like afterwards and like tell her, and like I like couldn't even talk because I was so emotional about it. And I was just like, this is it, like this is the thing, like. And I was like so excited about it, and she's like, uh-huh. And I was like, you know, and I think the cool thing is like, she's been working, this is my wife, and she's been working in the shop with me a little bit, and she's like in this process of making something, and I think she's gonna see the end result soon and have that feeling, and like I am excited for her, and like I think it is just, there isn't another feeling like it. I don't know if you feel that way, but
Yeah, totally. Well, I think it's like an experience of actualization. Yeah, I think that's a
yes,
big reason why people are making, is because there's something inside of you and you feel the desire to express it. And so being able to do it at an ability that, or even at any ability, but I think especially as you grow in your craft, is seeing it at the ability of something that, you know, you were imagining when you started out, like you're seeing what was in your head come to life. It's so powerful because you're able to like hold an expression in your hands, so to speak. I mean, I think about it a lot the more I work on some of my crafts, like illustration. I remember, you know, being a kid and drawing and being like, this is awesome. And, you know, then you learn a little more and you're like, oh, that's like not really good. And then the more you know, the more you know that you don't know anything at all. And then you start knowing something and being able to see it come to life, and techniques and just growing. It's validating, I think, as not only an artist, but as a person, um, being able to express yourself in a meaningful way.
yeah, that's so, like, that is like such a good way to describe it. I don't know that I've ever like had that reflected back to me in that way, and I really appreciate hearing that, because I think one of the things that really frustrates me about woodworking in particular, but I think there's other crafts that are really highly technical, is there's so much emphasis on the technical thing of learning the technical part, and I think it's important, but I think people miss the reason of why it's important so much, of like, and they just focus on the technique, or like they're just trying to check off techniques and get higher and higher on techniques. But the whole reason for me anyways is like, I want to learn techniques so then I can have that actualization. It's not about checking off the technique and being like, I'm technically better than I was. It's more like I need this technique to make my vision work. And then
Yeah.
that's what's super interesting to me. It's like I recently did this tray for my dad, and it was like one of those moments for me where it was like, it took me a long time to get the steam bending learning, and then I kind of had my form, and then I was like, I knew the image I wanted to put inside of it, but then I had to get like higher marquetry skills for it to be the detail I wanted it to be. And then when it all came together, I was like, oh my gosh, but that was like years of getting those technical skills and learning in between and making things in between. But like, I think it was never for me where it was like, I want to learn this skill because I want to be the best technically savvy, or like I don't know how to explain it, but it's like,
Yeah. Well, it's like you
more
get those
about
skills.
Yeah.
Well, you get like those skills, and then it's like, what do you say with them? And so also,
Yeah.
I mean, developing those skills is great as an artist, but also developing your voice. Because
Yeah.
I think that, well, we were just talking earlier about the aesthetics of things, you know, and how social media is full of aesthetically pleasing things and like reels, like everything's so polished, but you kind of lose some of the soul. So it's like you could make something that looks beautiful and technically, as close to perfect as maybe someone could get. But if it doesn't actually mean anything, if there's no voice or idea behind it, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's some aspect where sometimes you just have to make things to get that technical skill. And like maybe there's not as much heart or voice into it. But then at some point, well, I think for me, and I wonder if people lose interest in getting those technical skills, or they get to a certain point and then they're like, is like if the drive to get that skill is not because you want to say something with it, then you will lose interest, or you will just go on to the next skill or try to get better, right? Because you're looking for something and there's not actually something driving you. And I think that was what was so interesting. I know I keep coming back to this movie, but it was so good because it was also just like they kept talking about how they were like, we're just two cowboys from Swaziland. And I'm so obsessed with like Western wear, and like it was just really wonderful to see like an atypical country artist being represented, and like that it's not that culture is available to everyone, sort of, which was like is like a whole nother conversation. But what he said at the end of that movie, one of the artists said at the end of the movie was like, in order to bring the best out of you, you have to be you, or something. I'm probably butchering what he said, but it's like in order to reach that height of your craft, it's not the technical skill. It's like fully in being you and wanting to like bring your voice out. And then that's what's going to drive. Yeah, that's what's going to drive your desire for technical skill. I think like the people who are the best and why they are the best is not because they are like, I want to learn these skills. It's because they are so driven to get those skills because there's something so deep that they want to say, and they need the skills in that medium to say it.
Yeah, totally.
So
totally. Yeah, it's like trying to write your opus, but you don't actually have a lexicon of words to choose from.
yeah.
So it can only mean so much because you're not unable to pick the right word for the situation. I totally agree. And I think also backtracking a little bit, I think I feel like I was saying like there wasn't value in things that were technically perfect, but maybe inauthentic. But there's just it's a different place for them. Maybe it's more of I'm likening it to this
school.
School,
Yeah,
but
like,
I'm likening it to this conversation I had when I was working in kitchens way back in the day, and this guy referred to himself as a craftsman rather than an artist or a chef, and was more about like I care about my skills and being good at what I do. I'm not necessarily trying to do it to put something new out into the world or to express myself. I just want to do what I do well. And I think of that as more of a crafts person or like, craftsman or craftswoman, but
or a crafts.
I don't know. Crafts day. Yeah. So I guess everything, really has its time.
Yeah. And
what was the name of the documentary again?
Dusty and Stones. So that's their
okay.
country artist names is Dusty and Stones, and they're cousins, and they're adorable. Okay. But yeah, I think, and maybe that is a really interesting distinction of like, because I've never identified much like as a woodworker or as a craftsman or craftsday as like that it doesn't feel right to me because I'm not in it to reproduce what somebody else has made. Like I don't really have a strong desire to do that. And then B, that I'm not interested in like just checking off technical skills. Like I think it's really funny because people will come in the shop and they think that they're gonna like we're gonna really bond over this, and they're like, oh, I just want to use woodworking to make functional items, and I'm like, cool, like, and I'm in support of that, but it is not like I want to make really silly stuff that has no use, and like being serious about craft has never been attractive to me. I think it is, for me, it feels very patriarchal and colonial. And it feels very like, I guess, like, unless you are this technically sound, you can't be in the space. And that is like, to me, all woodworking is woodworking, and it doesn't have to, it's like whatever you want to say. And if you can say that with very limited technical skills, then why does it matter, right? It's still woodworking. Then, so if we're policing what woodworking is, then that's, to me, I don't like that. That doesn't feel inclusive to me, I guess. But I know that there are people. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to kind of piggyback off that idea and say that, I think intention is everything. I think what I'm getting out of this conversation so far is, you could be the best at, getting your point across, or you could be the best technically, but it kind of comes down to intention at the end of the day.
Yeah, totally. Like, I think they talk about that in my comic class of like, there's people whose comics are really awesome and they're saying what they want to say with stick figures, right? And then there's people who are doing these like insane in-depth, technically, like the amount of drawing skill that they have to have is amazing. And that's how they want to spend their time, and that's what they need to say what they want to say. And like, who's to say, I guess, I think the thing that feels patriarchal is like, who's to say which is better, right? Is like to say that technical skill is the only thing that makes something good, I think is limiting, right? Because then there's all these people that want to say things, and maybe they're not interested in getting that technical skill, and they're able to say exactly what they want to say with less of that skill. So yeah, I don't know. I think we've made our point.
Yeah, and I just to also piggyback again off of that idea of patriarchal views of skill and art, that not everything's a competition. And I feels like when everything is just about being the best, wood spinner, or the best comic book artist, or the best musician, it kind of comes down to this idea of like, in order for me to be worth it, I have to be the best, and there's only one place at the top of the podium. So I think that also is a leading cause of burnout, is just that like, if you don't feel like what you're trying to do is achievable, then at some point, what are you getting out of it, and why is it worth it?
Yeah, this has been really helpful also to hear you kind of like your perspective on it, because it's like, I think the way I heard you say that is like, if you're just trying to go up the ladder to get to the top, but where you are in the ladder, if you just get off and start doing the work at the level you're at, you're good. you know, if you're able to say what you want to say, go for it. Like, if you do need to, or if like, and then maybe you say what you want to say, and then you're like, actually, I want another skill to be able to do this. Then, and then you go up it again, and then you get off and say and do the work versus like, if you're only just trying to go to the top and you're not, you know, that intention of like, what's the intention behind this? If it's just to like catch up with somebody else, you're never going to, because they have something completely different to say than you do, and so you're never going to catch them. And then B, like, you know, if you're just trying to catch them, then you're not saying what you want to say, and then like you said, you're going to burn out, because the whole reason that drives people to want to learn is to get to say what they want to say and be able to be seen, right? To truly be seen in that.
Totally. Well, I think that, you know, just in my personal experience, I've been on this journey of I want to make films in some capacity. Like, I find that to be a really inspiring medium, and it's been something that I've been trying to do. And I've made a lot of things, and I feel like every time I make a thing, it's not good enough, because, and then I could rattle off a whole list of things, you know, and like, why I'm never the person for the job, because I am not making videos like this person. I'm not making films like this person. And then I was watching Clerks the other day and looking at it and realizing, like, you know, Kevin Smith just, you know, he did this on a whim. I mean, not really on a whim, but like, it's not like he had a huge production behind him. He made something that was profound on a small budget with what he could. Mm-hmm. And it was enough. It was enough for me as a viewer, and to be like, you know, that it really hit me. And it's a film that I've watched, you know, several times a year for the last 15 years since discovering it. And so kind of makes me think, like, are my priorities in the right order if I'm feeling like, you know, I can get so far into this project, like I could make a thing, but if it's not, and it's not necessarily as perfect as or as polished as somebody else, but it still has some heart, maybe that is good enough for right now. Like, I don't have to be Stanley Kubrick right now. I could still be like an indie filmmaker, just not right now, not at the level that I will be someday. And that's okay, because at some point I'll develop my own style, and I'm working on developing my own voice. And it's just kind of like with every other craft. And I just think that from my point of view, it's really easy to burn out, because now I'd started this whole multimedia film kind of program, and it's the last thing I want to do. And I was so excited because I thought it was important. And now I'm like, is this really that important? I don't know. It kind of takes away from my time to be creative for myself. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, I think about that a lot, of like, we can easily take ourselves out of a space because we can say, well, we're not good enough, right? Of like, oh, like I hear people say that all the time. I can't come into the shop because I don't know anything about woodworking. Well, literally, it's a shop to teach people how to do woodworking. And so it's like, you don't have to know anything, mm-hmm. But it's like, they're like, I don't know enough. And it's like, well, but you don't, like, it's like, and so we put those barriers in front of ourselves because the alternative is to actually do it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's oftentimes that's the scarier thing, is to actually do the work. And so it's easier to be like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I shouldn't be in that space, or, you know, like this is kind of a random example, but like, there was this like running hat that I really wanted, and it said Corvallis Runners. And I was like, oh, well, I don't run. And like, I have run since I was like 10 years old, right? I don't run like a Kenyan marathon runner. Like, I don't run sub 2 hour marathons, but I run. Like, that is like, I run, but like I take myself out of that space because I'm not, I'm not good enough or whatever. And so, and then I thought about it and I was like, no, I'm going to buy this hat. Like, I'm a runner, and like that I get to be in the space exactly at where I'm at the ladder. And like, I got off the ladder at this point in running, and I don't run more than 3 miles, but I run with my dog a couple times a week, and that I get to identify as a runner. Like, who's to say that I don't, right? And no one else is saying it. It's just me saying, oh, I'm not good enough, right? Because to like identify as that is like, oh, what is that? What does that mean? And like, what is that like to embody that identity, even though I'm pretty mediocre at running? And that's probably giving myself grace. Is like, I'm a very, just casual runner, but it's like to take up space in those things where it's like, oh yeah, I'm a filmmaker. You've made films, right? Like, and so to say I'm a filmmaker is like, what does that feel like to really embody that and be like, because people will ask me like, are you a runner? And I'm like, no, like and so like, I'm just going to start saying yes to all of the things.
Yeah, totally.
Are you a baker?
And
yes.
Yes, all those things. And I think as I'm looking at the time and I have that class that I don't want to go to that I was just telling everyone about, I think a great call to action would be, instead of being like, I'm not good enough, how about everyone listening says, yes, I am an artist. Yes, I am a maker or a runner or whatever you want to be. You already are. You're just in your early stages. That's my closing thought. Catherine, do you have a closing thought?
I love it. Yeah. I think that's a good call to arms. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us. We are new to podcasting. So, well, Kacey's not, but I am. So, yeah, it feels really good to be sharing thoughts with y'all on creativity. And, we will be back, and we will have our co-host with us next time. So tune in.
The illustrious Jamie.
Yes, the artist known as Jamie Hudnall. So yeah, check us out then. Follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter on our website. And yeah, stay in touch.
Yes. Can't wait for next time, and thank you. See you later, all.
Bye.